How to survive a hurricane with an Alzheimer's patient. I took care of my mom, Dotty, for 8.5 years, 3,112 days. My mom lived with Alzheimer's disease. We survived two hurricanes together, including the monster Hurricane Wilma, a Category 3 hurricane when it reached our home in Delray Beach, Florida. The eye of the hurricane went right over us. Here are 6 of my most important tips for dealing with an Alzheimer's patient during a hurricane. Let me start by saying this. It isn't easy, and you really do need to get mentally prepared. Number 1, it's not their fault. My mom acted downright nutty during the hurricane. She did exactly the opposite of what you or I would do during a hurricane. I had problems getting her to stay in a safe place. She constantly wandered over to the windows to see what was going on. The noise from the hurricane sounded like a truck roaring by while you were standing on a corner. It was loud. My mother couldn't figure out what was going on, and she kept asking me what is going on. Let me make my first point. It's not their fault. Let me say it right now. You will need to repeat these words over and over in your head. It's not her fault. It was not my mom's fault because she really couldn't understand what was going on and the danger we were in. Here's the deal. More likely than not, you're going to get upset with your loved one living with Alzheimer's when they start doing the wrong kinds of things. This is how your brain works. This is how my brain works. Someone does something wrong and you try and correct them. You ask them to stop, and then you start yelling and criticizing them. You get angry. You have to help yourself when you're in a hurricane with a person living with dementia. You have to help yourself operate as effectively as possible as a caregiver. You have to remind yourself over and over, it's not her fault. You have to work with your own brain to succeed. You have to deal with the behaviors that come to all of us as we live in Alzheimer's world. In other words, you have to learn how to communicate effectively with a person that's living in a world filled with Alzheimer's. Number 2, don't try to explain. The tendency of a caregiver, myself included, is to try and explain over and over what is going on and try to tell your loved one how dangerous it is outside. Don't bother, it won't work. You can say it over and over, but guess what? They won't remember what you said a couple of minutes ago. So all you'll end up doing is frustrating yourself when they don't remember. You and I know that this happens, and you have to keep this straight in your head. If you try and engage in this behavior, explaining, you will accomplish one thing. You'll hurt yourself. Your level of frustration will rise, your level of stress will rise, and sooner or later, the anger will set in. I know what that feels like. Is that what you want to make things worse, or do you want to survive intact, mentally intact, after the hurricane? Remember this one. No more blah, blah, blah. What to do? I've written a good article. You can find a link to it in the show notes. It's entitled Alzheimer's Communication, No More Blah, Blah, Blah. If you haven't read it, I suggest you take a look at it. I think you'll find it very helpful in this issue. Number 3, be a guide. You have 2 big weapons at your disposal, your smile and your hand. When you want to move your loved one back to a safe place or get them to cooperate in any way, start with a smile. Make sure they're looking at you and smile. Try to relax to the degree possible. The smile actually helps you do this. It also helps you to be kind and understanding. After smiling, stick out your hand palm up. Wait for your loved one to take it. Do not explain when they ask, where are we going, what are we doing? Wait for them to take your hand and guide them. Do not say more than 3 words. The words follow me are more than enough. Smile, palm of your hand. You have everything you need. Use these 2 tools effectively. These really work well in a hurricane, and to be honest with you, they work extremely well in daily life, so keep that in mind. Remind yourself, and many of you have heard me say this over and over, always be kinder than you feel. Yes, this works. Doing the exact opposite of what your brain will tell you to do in this situation, a hurricane or a natural disaster, will really work well. Try it and you'll find out. Okay, let's recap so far. It's not their fault. Don't try to explain. And importantly, be a guide. Number 4, don't be an idiot and a fool like me. Yep, I was an idiot and a fool. Let me describe myself before one of the hurricanes that my mother and I went through. I wanted to be a macho man. I wanted to protect our kingdom, our home, and I wanted to protect my mom. Who could do this better than me? No one, in my opinion. I decided to go it alone with my mom during a hurricane. After the fact, I realized that yes, I was a macho man, and yes, I was an idiot and a fool. Why did I think going it alone made me a better man and a better caregiver? What should I have done? One of two things. I should have taken in a couple of people to stay with us, a few elderly people that were alone and scared. We could have ridden out the storm together. Now that might have made me a macho man. Better yet, I should have gone to the house of one of my friends who was like the third little pig, the kind of house that would keep the big bad wolf at bay. I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down. The hurricane is the big bad wolf. Believe it or not, I could have done this. I didn't. Why not? Because I am a macho man and an idiot and a fool. We all need support. We know that, don't we? Why didn't I get myself into a hurricane support group? Better yet, why didn't I form my own hurricane support group? Well, you know the answer from way back when, but if I had to do it over, I would have brought some people together and we would have written out Wilma and the other storms together. If you can get with a group of people, here is the big benefit. You'll have someone to talk with your loved one and keep them occupied. This way, they might stay in one place, the safest place. During Wilma, a tree blew through our window. So here I have my mom, and it's just me, and I'm trying to do everything I can to manage the situation. And here's my mom right behind me in harm's way. It's a long story, so I'm going to skip that one for now. Now, we all know this. Caregivers often feel abandoned and alone. I'm a member of the club. In this case, I abused myself and my mom, in my opinion. I decided we would go it alone. Why didn't I help others? Why didn't I help myself? Don't let this happen to you. Give this some serious consideration. Here's one other consideration that I think you should consider. Number 5, hurricane shelters. Believe it or not, there are hurricane shelters that are equipped to deal with dementia patients. I also learned recently that many of these shelters also have dementia professionals and volunteer that are already used to dealing with dementia patients. How do you find one? Well, as caregivers, we're often confused, and yes, it's very hard to get information. So, if you don't know what to do, the first thing I would do now is call a place that specializes in adult day services for Alzheimer's and dementia patients. This is also sometimes called adult daycare. One thing I learned from speaking to caregivers at adult day services, that the folks that run these places are often ex-nurses, experienced in geriatric care, or to be honest with you, just kind-hearted folks. They already know what to do in a situation like this, and they can help you. Don't forget, they know lots of caregivers that need help, and they're interacting with them all the time. So, keep that in mind. They're already helping caregivers that don't know what to do when a hurricane or a natural disaster strikes. I learned a long time ago, when possible, go to the knowledge. Go find someone that has the same problem and already knows the solution. This is the best way to learn, and in case of a hurricane, it's the easiest way to find what you need. Also, if you're the caregiver living alone with your loved one that has dementia and you're scared, I'm going to say this very clearly. Go ride it out in a shelter. I know people don't like to do that, but you need to give this serious consideration. Okay, number 6 tip. Always be kinder than you feel. Many of you know I've written about this extensively, but nothing beats a hug during times of great stress. Nothing beats holding hands during a time of great stress. We are all humans, and nothing beats feeling the touch of another person during times of stress. Don't overlook the importance of this. Of course, you can also pray for the best possible outcome for you, your neighbors, and your friends. I would suggest you do that. It can't hurt. We had lots of people praying for us around the world when my mom was alive during Wilma. It was really fantastic, and it really just makes you a lot stronger. Hurricane Irma is heading right at my home as I write this. If you're reading or listening to the podcast, please pray for us. If you were listening or reading after the fact, well, by now you know what happened. This will be my fifth hurricane since I moved to South Florida in 2003. I want to admit it, I'm anxious and nervous. There is some good news. I'm going to take care of a couple elderly people who were good friends and very kind to my mom. I'm humble now, no longer macho man. Dotty, we miss you. You just listened to original content from Bob DeMarco, founder of the Alzheimer's Reading Room. To find additional information related to this podcast and links to related articles that delve deeper into the issues discussed in this podcast, look in the show notes below the podcast. You can also visit the alzheimersreadingroom.com to subscribe to our newest free notification service and be the first to get access to our newest content. Thank you all for listening. See you next time.